What up, gang? Back at it again with another video, and today we're going to be breaking down chapter 10 of my brand new book, The Simplicity Complexity of Life. Link is going to be down in the description if you want to pick yourself up a copy. It helps out me and the channel immensely, so let's go ahead and just dive right in. Chapter 10, The Moral Compass. To put a definition onto what morality is no simple feat. But if one must try, morality is the emotional, mental, and physical guidelines set on the people of society by government institutions, religious institutions, the education system, and big corporations, and it is recognized as the widely correct way of living, and what is socially accepted as right and wrong in a given society. That's my kind of textbook definition of what morality is. And morality is such a wide range of things and involves so much more than we kind of just take it as at face value. And next I'm going on to bring up a quote of Friedrich Nietzsche's kind of explanation of morality and how he describes it. Morality is just a fiction used by the herd of inferior human beings to hold back the few superior men. Morality in philosophy, and I believe this, and Nietzsche held this similar regard, that morality in the world and in religion especially has been created and used as a way to hold back man's possibilities and what we can and can't do, and determine what we can and can't do. And I think that causes a lot of problems and holds back society and man's potential. And as he says, it's a fiction used by the herd of inferior human beings to hold back the few superior men. Oftentimes, not always, but people will deem things as morally wrong, or you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, especially in religious circles, because they can't experience it, or because they're jealous oftentimes, or because deep down inside they have that desire for that thing. They say that you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. Some good examples are homosexuality. You shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, it's a sin to be gay. But then these priests and all these weirdos that are saying that in religious circles, they're the ones that are cheating on their wife with men, or that are, self-hating gays, or that are, molesting altar boys. And it's really a reflection of what they deep down desire, people that say, oh, you shouldn't sleep around. And personally, I don't think you should, because like I kind of go on to say later on in this chapter, it desensitizes you, these, fast-paced pleasures of life. But they, deem that as morally wrong, because oftentimes they don't have the best luck with women or with partners, and people do that a lot. It's kind of the story of the fox and the grapes. The fox that wants the grapes that are on the high vine, but he can't get to them, so he deems the grapes as, oh, they're probably sour anyways, or they're probably not as good. Well, the fox is never going to know until he really goes out and gets the grapes. That's kind of an example I like to use. What is commonly mistaken as morality, an emotion we have developed over time called empathy, is what we as humans have developed over thousands of years. Oftentimes, like I speak on, those get mixed up with one another, and people think, oh, well, there's these things that are objectively moral truth, and usually it's people in religious circles, or people in, that study law, that, oh, murder is wrong because of this, and everyone thinks murder is wrong, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, everyone thinks murder is wrong, and that cannibalism is wrong, and that stealing is wrong, because we have developed as humans this thing called, empathy, this emotion called empathy for one another. because, oh, I wouldn't want someone to kill me or steal from me or hurt me or my loved ones, so I'm not going to want to do that to others. But that's not a naturally occurring thing in nature. Other animals don't have that. There's animals that will straight up eat each other, that will steal food from each other, that, do all these different things. We only have, that and morality and in our modern day civilized world that we live in, because we are so much, more socially advanced than every other species of animals on Earth. And we as humans, through thousands of years developing emotions and socially developing, we've, created and developed empathy for one another. And even though it seems like we live in a world where empathy and sympathy for one another is lacking, especially when it comes to, topics such as, abortion or gun rights, or gun control, or civil rights in this country that are being violated, we still, as humans, are the most socially advanced and empathetic creatures on Earth. Morality is something that is decided upon in the court of public opinion, something that differs from society to society and culture to culture. I wrote that because I think it's a very true statement that morality and what is right and wrong differs from culture to culture, society to society. So a few things that are differing is, one is cannibalism. There's still some cultures and civilizations around the world that think cannibalism is okay and a fine, normal kind of thing. Most people in most societies, I'd say 99.9%, think that cannibalism is wrong, and I feel like most people would agree with that, but there are some places in the world where that's still seen as a normal thing. One example for me and within my kind of search of morality is nudity. I've always kind of been interested at that concept of why nudity is seen as this weird kind of vile thing, and it never really made sense to me because it's, sexual organs, but they're not being used in a sexual way. Just seeing them is whatever, dude. Everyone has that. Everyone has a dick or a fucking puss, so what's the fucking shock, and I think a lot of that stems back to that religious hierarchy and that religious patriarchy of deeming sex as bad, because it's something that they think should be sacred, or that they really just can't get or weren't free to express, so they want everyone to not be able to express that, and they see it as bad. When even things like the female breast, that's been a topic of discussion in the news and in the media lately over the last couple of years, of now that women can openly show their breasts out in public as long as it's not in a sexual or lewd way, which I completely agree with and I think is normal. But we still don't really see women just walking around with their shirt off out in public, the same way men might. But because socially it's seen as still morally kind of wrong or taboo, even though legally now it's been seen as fine. And I don't know if we'll ever fully see, at least in my lifetime, that transition, but I hope eventually we do. And then I hope eventually we get that transition with, the sexual organs, because everyone has a dick, everyone has a vagina. It's, a normal fucking thing. As long as they're not being used in a sexual way, I don't really think that nudity per se is this weird thing. Now, I don't think that you should be nude everywhere. I think there's a time and a place for it, but like at the beach, I think's fine, even nude scenes in movies, as long as it's not in a sexual way, I think's fine. Everyone has sexual organs, and it's a normal part of life. It's not this vulgar, repulsive thing. Because if we're talking about what's repulsive, we could say the same thing about just someone being fat. Oh, I don't want to see a fat person. What are we going to fucking force fat people to stay inside? Like, like I don't know. I think just nudity and how that's seen as a morally kind of taboo thing. Like me, I don't think nudity is, this taboo kind of thing or morally wrong to be naked. But I think it's wrong when it's in a sexual act or a sexual way, or if you're doing it for the sole purpose of getting attention from the opposite sex, or getting arousal out of the opposite sex. That's when I think it's wrong. But I think just straight nudity, whatever, dude. Everyone has sexual reproductive organs. Get the fuck over it. Here I go on to quote Nietzsche again. Nietzsche would share the same sentiment and belief with this quote: morality is neither rational nor absolute nor natural. Let's break this down. So morality is neither rational. Obviously, I think there's some rationality with it, but a lot of it just goes based off of, what is, seen by the greater population as right. And sometimes it's rational, sometimes it's not. Nor absolute. Obviously, morality changes. One of the biggest moral changes in history is slavery, going to slavery being wrong. And then another one is nor natural, that it's not a natural occurring thing, at least in the rest of nature. In the modern day of the civilized world that man lives in, it's a thing, I guess, but out in nature it's not. Animals, they kill each other, they kill their own species, there's inbreeding, there's all kinds of different things that we would see as morally not right, but in nature happen all the time, are quite frequent. Jean-Paul Sartre believed we are condemned as humans to a life of freedom, and that we are thrown into the world without knowing how to use this freedom, essentially resulting in us having the ones that learn how to use their freedom decide for us, holding us back from reaching our true potential. Us living in a box of what they see as right and wrong, and us in turn following what he coined as bad faith, blindly following the lies we in society tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better rather than facing the existential crisis we are facing. That there is no naturally occurring morality or intrinsic meaning to life or phenomenon of a godlike being deciding these things and creating them for us. A lot of people will quote, the Bible or their holy text or their holy scriptures as laying down, what is objectively morally wrong, blah, 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 that homosexuality is wrong, or that women speaking out and not being subservient to men is wrong, and that all these things that limit us are wrong, that in the Bible, too, that never seem to get brought up for some reason as sins, but that eating shrimp is a sin, and that wearing mixed fabrics are also a sin. But people like to forget those for some reason. I wonder why. They think that these things, that limit us, are the law of the land, that were heavenly sent by God and that should dictate over all of us. And that's just made up bullshit by the weak people that are somehow in charge. They make up this bullshit to try and limit us and control the weak, and it's just limiting man's potential and putting caps on our freedoms. With bad faith, we lie to ourselves and others about the options we have. We limit the options we have by saying there is only one way that is right or destined, limiting our freedom similarly to the way morality does. They inherit from their parents' religion and teachers rather than coming up with their own, dooming themselves into a life of blindly following. A lot of people do this. If you believe in religion and your parents believe in that same religion, guess what? You fucking inherited that. We all inherit things from our parents, but what separates a very small few of us from these other people is the ability to realize, hey, I inherited this trait from my parent or this belief. I'm going to go out and now actually test it. I'm going to look at it from outside perspectives rather than just my own and my small little worldview. I'm gonna ask myself, is it really plausible that out of the thousands of religions on earth that Christianity just happens to be the right one? And then out of all the thousands of denominations of Christianity, that mine just happens to be the right one, and that luckily I was born in the place where that's exactly what I believe? Because guess what? If I was born in Tibet, I most likely would be a monk. If I was born in the Middle East, guess what? I most likely would be Muslim. And take yourself out of your small little worldview of that this is exactly how everything is, and expand that view. And once you really do that and you test and challenge your beliefs, the world opens up to you in such a great magnified way, and you will experience such a blissful amount of freedom that you never have before. And that is what separates people like me and the free thinkers in this world from the rest of the flock that just go along and they live their small little brained lives and believe that everything that they've been spoon-fed and believed throughout their life is the truth, and they never question it. Similarly to Friedrich Nietzsche's idea of slave morality being that those with slave morality will condemn those above them for having what they deep down desire, but writing it off as bad as a way to make themselves feel better for not having it, and resulting in this limiting of potential and this moral dynamic that is heavily dependent on perspective. With this type of moral structure stemming from religion, poverty, and politics, Immanuel Kant had a very interesting stance on morality and its role and its relationship with religion, himself having grown up with a religious background, but acknowledging and seeing how religion implicates on human freedom and potential, but also seeing its purpose and place in society and in the modern day world. Immanuel Kant being a key figure in deontology, him believing that we as humans naturally are free and have freedom, but it being important that we find morality and put moral guidelines on freedom through duties and responsibilities that would enhance societal structure, believing that unlimited freedom was not really freedom because people would still be at the will of their pleasures and desires, and that putting limitations and rules over ourselves would lead to more fulfilling life for everyone, and that moral structure is crucial for society, otherwise society would fall into madness. So, like I go on to discuss, first I want to put in my current takes on this. I disagree that we need religion necessarily for society. I think in society all throughout history we've needed it, and even in modern day society we somewhat need it, but I think we could eventually get to a society where we don't have religion. I don't think it'll be anytime soon, probably thousands of years from now, if humans even make it then. But society has struggled so much also because of religion, and I get the stance he's trying to make here with that society and religion, religion gives society structure and meaning, which is important for life. But I feel like the part of where we have to find responsibilities and structure, I feel like we can get that, but through discipline, not necessarily through religious implications and structure being put into, society and into the way we conduct ourselves throughout life, but instead just finding common, logical answers to what we feel as a society is right and wrong, and learning and accepting that we might have differing opinions and finding that middle ground, that foreground where we can be at peace with one another and sometimes agree to disagree and still respect each other at the end of the day. And that's something that we struggle with a lot of people struggle with. But also, knowing that we do need some type of structure in society, and we do need morality in society and law, but I don't necessarily believe we need it through religion. I feel like we could live in a world and in a society where religion is a thing of the past. But will we ever? Most likely not, because man is very weak mentally. These are all valid points. Society does need morality and structure to function, but what kind is very important. The Stoics had the 4 virtues of Stoicism that they modeled their morals and actions around. The 4 virtues of Stoicism are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom and morality have a funny relationship. What is wisdom and what is morality? Right and wrong are both subjective. A person may say caring for the weak is stupid and pointless because they are no use. Another person may say this type of morality is wrong, and that their morality cannot simply just let the weak people struggle. Who is the wise one? And who is morally right? It's completely subjective. It's subjective in its situation. Now, the court of public opinion would most likely say that the one that is caring for the weak is morally right, because we as humans naturally have developed empathy for others. A Stoic would argue in this situation that even though the truth is that yes, these people are weak and struggling and of very little use, it is our duty not to simply stand by and watch as they struggle, but to sympathize with them. And if we can do something to help them, we should. Those who acquire wisdom are not always willing to share it due to their persistent scarcity of power that comes with wisdom. Within those who seek to acquire wisdom lies a seed for immense growth and power, the type that can make change. Now, within this growth of knowledge comes most times growth of wealth and power. The honest truth is to be educated is not a right, it is a privilege, one that we must fight for. I agree. I don't think that that they want you to be educated. A lot of these people, they want you to file in line. They want you to be brainwashed by religion, by your phones, by consumerism, by capitalism. They want you to buy their bullshit rhetoric and feed into that, and to spread that to other people and spread that hatred and cause an even bigger divide. And let's see. I think that sadly we live in a world where we all think we should be educated. Well, somewhat, but we all want to be educated for the most part, and we all think we're educated. But education is not a right. It's a privilege, one we must fight for. If we want to go out and seek a better future and a better tomorrow for ourselves and for our offspring, it's something we must go out and seek and fight for. Many of those who are educated do not want us to be educated, so we stay weak and we stay dependent so they can turn a profit. They want us to be uneducated and divided on religion, politics, our health, and even our own mind, so they can dictate what is morally right and wrong and keep us subservient to what they desire. There are wise people that will naturally rise to the top of society. So many people think they are educated just because they went to school or they read an article online. But those who are truly educated know 3 things. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Showing evidence of it, or at least giving people the trickery of hope. We see this with religion. Constantly throughout religion, they falsify, evidence, or they try and push religion through proving things, but instead of actually proving them, they're just giving that sense false of hope, instead of actually giving real, evidence that can be checked and backed. Secondly, those who are truly educated know that not everything is clean-cut black and white. You truly learn how little you actually know when you find out how much you have that you can still learn. Not everything in this world is black and white. A lot of things fall into that middle gray area, and we have to realize this. Things such as, abortion or civil rights, or how to create an equal playing field for everyone in this world. that's something that, is not a black and white answer that applies to everyone, that can be blanket. It's something that we have to look at kind of at a case-to-case scenario and kind of take a step back and put ourselves in other people's shoes sometimes. And a lot of us are not smart enough or intelligent enough to do that because we have our own beliefs and they become such a strong held part of us. And third, that wisdom doesn't come with age, it comes with experience. And this is something I find very true and I struggle with a lot. Being that with me being, someone younger, a lot of times people will try and discredit you or say, oh, well, you shouldn't know that, or, oh, you're smart for your age. No, it's that I'm experienced and I've educated myself. I've gone out, taken the time. I've, wrote books. I've delved into what I truly believe. I've read other people's perspectives. I've put myself in other people's shoes. I've gone out and talked to other people. That's how you educate yourself, Not just fucking reading an article online or because you went to school for 4 years, dude. Actually go out, interact with people, experience the world. Look at the world from a bigger lens, like I said earlier, than just your small little town. Get out, experience the world. But yeah, wisdom does not come with age, it comes with experience. Another thing, we see that there are people that are 50 years old that are still living in their parents' basement, and then there are people that are 15 years old and are changing the world and the way the world is and the way we look at the world. So wisdom definitely does not come with age, it comes with experience. There will forever be discourse on what's morally right and wrong, but we as people should look deeper as to where those thoughts and opinions are coming from. Are they rooted in fear, hate, and selfishness, or in seeking for a better understanding of the world and a brighter future for us as a society? Morals change with time, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. It depends on who you ask. The second of the 4 virtues is courage. We as people should have the courage to stand up against injustice. Courage is not only something we must have for ourselves, but we should also have the courage to stand up for others. When you see people suffering, I mean truly in pain, physically, emotionally, monetarily, we should lift them up if we can. Have courage to help and stand up for the weak. Shows true power and strength. Courage comes in many forms, small and big. Once we have the courage to stand up for one another, the world will be a better place. And once we have the courage to be ourselves, we will live a life we deserve. I think that's very true. We have to have courage not only for ourselves, but for one another. Being able to stick up for people, I think is heavily rooted in stoicism, but that's just the right thing to do. You see someone that's suffering, you go out and you help them if you can. You don't just brush it off just because it doesn't personally affect you, or just write them off as bitching or whining. You go out and you help them and you try and make the situation better. The third of the 4 virtues is justice. Morality often decides what is just. And when things are not, justice often follows closely behind. Seeking to make right what we deem as wrong is something we all as humans do to a certain extent. In Stoicism, justice goes beyond just the law, but it is something held as a personal responsibility. Kind of like I was just saying. Responsibility to uphold, to be fair, respectful, and responsible, not only with yourself, but also to encourage and look for the same from others. Hold people to that standard, We got to remember that, we must be strict with ourselves, tolerant with others, but also we should hold a standard for other people, not just allow them to do whatever the fuck they want and hurt themselves or hurt others. If someone's struggling with drug addiction, we go out, we get them help, If someone is, bullying another person, we go out and we stop that, If someone's hungry, starving on the street, we go get them food, We talk to them, we try and hear their story. and help them along. That's what we do. We don't, diminish, we don't, patronize them for being in what position they're in. Justice means to make something right. This often gets mistaken with equal, similarly to the phrase, an eye for an eye. Justice, the law, and morality all impact one another, and the law being what is right and wrong based off of moral judgments that sometimes change over time or differ from society to society. The law being considered right and wrong over the land and its people, and justice is the consequences that happen when the things are not fair or something that is seen as not fair happens. The fourth and final of the four virtues is temperance, better known as moderation, is having the self-discipline to set limits on how much and when you consume certain things, knowing there is a time and place for certain things, such as food, alcohol, sex, entertainment, and more. It's important we set limits on how much we take, and similarly to kind of how Immanuel Kant said and believed that we must set limitations on ourselves, but that is on ourselves, not on each other, not as a blanket for everyone. Set limitations on ourselves and what works for us. If we're someone that we know if we have one drink, we're going to end up having 6, guess what? We shouldn't drink. If we are someone that, wants to sit down and binge a TV show, that, is not something we should do. Instead, watch, 2-3 episodes, get up, go do something active, and then maybe come back, 5-6 hours later and watch another episode and then go to sleep. That is, something, that is kind of falls in that line of setting those limits, but you set those limits for yourself, not for others, and people should not be setting those limits on you. That's the difference, between setting those limits yourself and religious institutions or different institutions like the government or, different, groups deeming or shaming you for believing or wanting to do this. Let's see. Treating yourself to things that are not necessarily needs is fine too, such as watching your favorite TV show after a day of work, but we must not overindulge, such as spending all day getting lost in the show, like I was kind of just talking about. Now, instant pleasure can become negative when you become reliant on it. Over time, it will desensitize you. You will no longer strive for what is truly meaningful and long-lasting. Stoics believe that often the harder, more difficult path leads to greater immense growth in a person and the longer lasting fulfillment. I completely agree. Oftentimes, instant pleasures get mistaken for simple pleasures, instant pleasures. We become reliant on in excess. Simple pleasures, on the other hand, allow us to relax and enjoy the simplicity of life. Just because it's a simple pleasure does not mean it does not come without work. Simple pleasures of life include going for a walk, doing a hobby you might enjoy, like painting or writing a song for fun, or spending quality time with friends and family. These simple pleasures enrich life as opposed to instant pleasures that desensitize. And I think that's a very good and important distinction we make and that we don't talk about enough, especially in society and especially in kind of our mental health space. The 4 Stoic virtues is just one set of many different moral and ethical structures as a way to conduct yourself throughout life. The 4 Stoic virtues is a moral structure at the end of the day, and that's one that worked for the Stoics, and that's one I try and apply to myself and that I recommend to other people, because it's one that you very much own yourself and hold yourself to, and it's not based in religion, it's not based in any real bigger kind of overarching thing. It's more so about just holding yourself responsible at the end of the day and doing what you can. Morality and justice are heavily dependent on perspective. There is a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche that beautifully illustrates this. If you crush a cockroach, you are a hero. If you crush a butterfly, you're a villain. Morals have aesthetic criteria. This is where the philosophical thinking around morality dives into value theory, which in itself is the base for morality. Most commonly, value theory is broken into two parts, ethics and aesthetics, and you can grab and read a copy of this book if you want me to dive more into it. But value theory is basically how we come up with what is morally just or what is morally important to us. That's kind of where I'm going to leave it at today. If you want to dive deeper into that chapter, make sure you guys hit that link in the description and pick up a copy, and make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys thought about chapter 10 in the comment section down below, and till next time, peace out.